select include file. It's available both as a SQL command or as a separate mode in MySQL dump. This the way the backup created this way. I mean, they have less overhead in terms of restoring the data because there's no SQL to pass; it's just loading the data. On the other hand, they are more tricky to restore because you need to keep in mind, you need to pass all those definitions, how those fields are separated by, how they're enclosed by, how lines are terminated. So you need to keep in mind that you have to pass those values. And again, it could be an additional problem. For example, if you have mixed environment, you have some Macs, you have some Windows hosts, so Windows clients, you have some Linux clients, and then although, for example, the end of line characters can be completely messed up. So this is just, I mean, it's not a problem. It's just something really inconvenient. What you may want to use it for is definitely to export data out of MySQL, because using select include file and some particular particular syntax for that, you can generate comma separated value files, and those files basically something every database will understand, and I think probably every spreadsheet out there. So if you'd like to move your data from MySQL to some other place, it could be the easiest way to do this. MyDumper, MyLoader. That's a pair of the tools that works together, and they are basically MySQL dump, slightly different. For starters, they allow there's a parallelization allowed here. So not only in a hacky way we can develop using MySQL dump, and then MySQL client to load the data. But it's possible to split the tables are split in chunks of rows, and then multiple threads can operate on a single table at once. So this is really, really useful if you have, for example, one large table, in which case our hacky way of working with MySQL dump won't be enough here. MySQL dumper, MySQL loader, they operate on data only, so you have to use MySQL dump to take care of dumping the schema, and they tend to be hard to install. Up to pretty recently there was only source code, so you had to compile it, and pretty recently, like 2-3 weeks maybe, I've seen a post that the RPMs were created. I haven't tested them yet, but it might help to speed up the installation process significantly. And the problem with the compilation was that it was buggy. Especially if you had some older systems, older libraries, older compilers, then yeah, it was sometimes really hard to build those binaries. On the other hand, once you have them running, once you build them, they will work fine. So it's not a big deal, but again, something kind of inconvenient. MyDumper and MyLoader, they are nice in terms of the dump time. Of course, it depends on everything. So your mileage may vary. It depends on the hardware, on the network throughput, on anything else, almost on your data. But what the truth is that in my experience, I've seen like 1 terabyte of data dumped in for 6 hours, a couple of hours. So it's pretty nice dump speed. Loading time is long, but it's still somewhat faster than the MySQL dump. I would say it's like 3-4 times faster than the data loaded back using MySQL client. So this is a significant change because, for example, it allows you to go from, even if it takes like 3-4 days to dump, to load the large data set, it's still only 3 or 4 days and not 2 weeks like you would get in using MySQL dump and then load it regularly. So this is basically the fastest logical backup that I know, and Therefore, you may want to, you may need to get familiar with it if you plan a major version upgrade and you want to, and you have large data set where MySQL dump would take just ages. Okay, and now let's talk a little bit about physical backups. Physical backups, as I mentioned, they're basically a copy, bit by bit copy of your dataset. Therefore, they're a very nice way of storing the data for example, disaster recovery, for some kind of offsite backup, or to provision new nodes. So yeah, exactly. They generate an exact copy of your data. So it's just moving bits, right? You're copying the files that are stored in your volume to some other place. Because of that, they tend to work on high level. It's not always the case. There are some exceptions, but some of those methods just allow you to restore all or nothing, which is basically you have to recover the whole database, and then you can, for example, dump a given table or a given set of rows if you need it, which is less convenient, but on the other hand, it's faster. It's a fast way of grabbing a copy of your data because you are copying bits. You don't have to go into MySQL. You don't have to parse the SQL. You don't have to execute those inserts. You don't have to fight with DB settings. No need for that. You just move bits. For the same reason, this is a fast way to restore your data because again, you're just moving bits over the network or to a separate volume, but it's fast. And of course, the limitation is the hardware only. So everything depends on your disk speed, on your network throughput. So that's it's really nice because usually the disks are much faster than what in MySQL can actually achieve in terms of loading the data and dumping it. And of course, as I mentioned before, physical backups are great for building the infrastructure. It is because this is a quick. So instead of, let's say, waiting 5 days for MySQL dump or 2-3 days for mydumper to dump the data and load it back, you can create a new node. You can create a new instance, a new server within a couple of hours. So this is a significant change in the recovery speed. xtrabackup, well, I think it's the backup solution when we are talking about physical backups. One of the most popular tools out there. This is the only backup for InnoDB tables. So for non-InnoDB tables, it's slightly less online. But it still can be used. It's a virtually non-locking, which means that it's like somewhat most of the time the locking will not cause any problems here. By default, it tends to take a flash table with read log for a fraction of a second to sync with binary logs, but it's even possible to disable this behavior as long as you're using InnoDB, of course. So that's basically the main advantage of using this tool is that it's not non-locking. You can run it on the working database. It works by copying the data files bit by bit, as I mentioned before. In the meantime, it logs InnoDB transactions which are happening. And then this log is used to actually replay those transactions and make the backup consistent. If you have MyISAM or any non-transactional storage engines, you will get logged. At least because they're running a flash log with Eric's commit is the only way to ensure that MySQL, the MyISAM data is in a consistent state. So you will get logged for the duration that is needed to copy the MyISAM tables. So if you have large MyISAM tables, then you may suffer for long logs. And obviously, I mean, the way to solve it is not to use MyISO, because right now there's really not much reason to use it. There are InnoDB can even run full text indexes, so it's really not much reason to stick with MyISO. xtrabackup it supports local backups or streaming over the network, so you can either store the backups locally on the node, or you can copy it, stream it over the network to some other location. It supports incremental backups, which is a really great thing to have, because as you can imagine, the problem, I mean, if you're using physical backups and you make a copy of your dataset, then well, you make a copy of your dataset. If you have 1 terabyte of data, and if you want to keep it for a week, you will need 7 terabytes of the data of this disk space. So incremental backups basically they take care only of the data that changed between this given time and the time of the previous backup. So it allows you to go down significantly in terms of the space needed to for your backups. As I mentioned before, backup needs to be prepared, because those transactions from the log have to be applied to MySQL, to the database. It's pretty simple process, as you can see below, which is InnoDB backup x apply log. Takes a while depending on the amount of changes that needs to be processed. And then you need to, I mean, you should remember about use memory option when applying the logs, because I mean by default it uses I think like 2 gigabytes if I remember correctly, but it's just not enough if you have significant traffic. But you can put here anything like 40 gigabytes, 100 gigabytes if you have such amount of memory, and it will definitely speed up the process. xtrabackup is an exception of of this all or nothing restore that I mentioned earlier. It definitely supports partial backups per schema and on table basis. It's not very popular, I would say. It is possible to use this kind of backup to speed up the recovery process of a given table if you, for some reason, need to recover only this particular table. Instead of restoring the whole data set, you just can restore this particular table space. But still, it's somewhat tricky, and I would say not very. I mean, I haven't seen it in action very often. xtrabackup can bundle replication information with the backup, so it gives you the binary log coordinations. It gives you change master to send command, so it makes easier for you to create a new slave and save it off the current master or current or the host where you took up the backup. You can also bundle Galera sequence numbers with it, which is a very nice thing if you want to avoid full state transfer. Because if, for example, if you recover the data using provision the new node using the xtrabackup, and then you set up the graph state data file using the data that xtrabackup provided you with, you should be able to go with incremental state transfer, other than which doesn't require other node to be a donor for a couple of hours, even sometimes. It just speeds things up, and it makes your whole cluster available more faster and quicker.